Today is August 4th, 2024, and welcome to the 400th episode of the Video Games podcast. Here on this show, I talk about any game at all, including new stuff, old stuff, and anything in between. My name is Brad Galloway. I'm the one-man host of this show, and I'm also the editor of GameCritics.com, a website that uses the full range of review scores from 0 to 10, while also offering full accessibility information on every review we publish. Thank you for joining me today. Hello, welcome. You are just in time for a very special episode. This is episode 400. It's been a while since we started the podcast, and I am still here. People were asking if I was going to do something special for the big 400. And to be perfectly honest, I'm not the kind of guy that celebrates special occasions. Pretty humble that way. I don't make a big deal out of my birthday. In fact, I've forgotten it a few times. I'm not really like a big holidays kind of a guy. Nothing against them, just not my personal jam. I try to live life in a wonderful way every single day. And so every day is a holiday to me, and I don't really single out other ones. So 400, I don't really have anything special because I'm not that kind of person. But I do think there is something special going on here on the show, or at least kind of special, rather than doing some kind of huge retrospective or a list of some kind or whatever, no special guests or anything like that. I think what ended up happening inadvertently is that I'm going to be sharing a little bit more about myself with you this episode. I just so happened to ask the listeners for some questions, and I got a really strong outpouring this time around. I usually get a couple, but I got a lot this time. And I figured since I've got so many, I'll just answer them all. And I think you'll learn a little bit more about me in the process. And so hopefully that's something that will be good listening for you. We're still going to do the usual, core games coverage, some housekeeping stuff. So same basic show, but towards the end of the program, right after we get done with all of the brand new games, I'll have a big, pretty beefy Q&A section, and that'll be talking about, some game stuff, but also just personal stuff as well. So if you're not interested in hearing more about me or who I am, that's totally fine. I don't blame you at all. Feel free to bounce after we get done with the games. But if you do want to know, you will be treated to some inside scoops and a couple peeks behind the curtain here at the GameCritics.com studio. So, all right, sit tight, get comfortable, grab a drink, and away we go. All right, first up is housekeeping. I usually kick the show off with everything game adjacent that's caught my eye in the last 7 days, tidbits, news items, industry happenings, etc., etc., etc. Okay, not a lot going on this week. I didn't see a lot of newsworthy coverage coming down the pike, except that Game Informer is canceled. And it's weird because I felt like this kind of happened really without any kind of big PR announcement or, no big celebration / grieving process. It kind of just came across my Twitter feed as I was randomly scrolling, and then it was just gone, and I didn't hear any more about it. And I figured it would be bigger news. Maybe I'm just not in the loop or something, but I feel like a lot of stories are kind of getting buried these days where the news cycle is going so fast and there's so much going on that even something like this, which would have caused shockwaves 5 or 10 years ago throughout the whole industry, it's just kind of and then you move on and you keep scrolling and then it's just gone from memory. So weird, but I did catch it. So basically Game Informer, the magazine, the paper magazine, which I subscribed to for many years, has just been canceled. And apparently it was canceled without any kind of notice. From what I gather, the people who were still employed there were working on the next issue as if nothing unusual was happening. Apparently they had some stories lined up, had some good cover images going, and they were, just doing the do, putting the next issue together, and then all of a sudden the axe fell and they're all out of a job. So unceremoniously let go from the sounds of things. So number one, just, sympathies to everybody who just lost their job. Game Informer was something pretty special. If you have been in the American game scene for any length of time, it's almost inevitable that at some point you've picked up an issue, you've read through it, at the very least you knew it. And if you're in game circles, game review circles or that kind of thing, it's probably pretty likely you knew somebody who actually worked there or at some point or another. I certainly knew plenty of people who worked there, and although I never wrote there myself, it was a dream of mine when I was younger. And so, there was always an issue around the house. I got it every month, always look forward to it, read it cover to cover. It was great, that and EGM back in the day and Game Fan, if you remember any of those magazines. I wonder if Game Informer, surely that must be the last print magazine in America to hang on. And is there even a game-oriented print magazine left in existence? Maybe in the UK somewhere, maybe Edge, maybe. But I don't think there's anything else here in America. If I'm wrong, somebody please write in and let me know. But basically, 33 years in business, 367 issues, if my information is correct. Apparently, based on a little bit of an article that I read in USA Today, was founded in 1991, published as a kind of, PR project by Funko Land, which was a game retailer, hard copy, cartridge / disc game retailer out of Minnesota, which merged or was bought out by GameStop later on. And Game Informer was kind of a perk. When you subscribed to Game Informer, you also got like the in-store discount for buying more games. So it was kind of a package. Like they really made it appealing where if you were going to be buying games, and at that time, downloading just wasn't a thing. Like you had to go actually to a store and like buy a game if you wanted to play a game. There was no eShop. There was no, PSN Online. There was no Xbox, Microsoft Game Store. It was like get in your car and drive to a store or walk there if you were close enough. And so when you would get there, they'd sell you the card. Hey, you want to join the GameStop, Game Club or whatever it's called. You get free issues of Game Informer, and who didn't want that? And then you also get like 10, 15% off of every purchase in the store or something. I mean, like everybody I knew who bought games and played games was like a member of that. So like everybody I knew read the magazine. It was huge. So it's just, I guess the end of an era, the passing of an epoch, I suppose. And gosh, I don't even know what to think. I mean, it's been a while since I read it. I still had like tons of issues in my garage. I think up until last year, I had boxes of them, and I ended up donating them to a local game museum run by Kels Lewin over at Pink Gorilla. It is Pink Gorilla. Yes, Pink Gorilla? Pink Godzilla. No. Which big monster is it? I think it's Pink Gorilla. Anyway, donated a bunch of stuff to her and Frank Cifaldi for their archival efforts. Go check them out online if you care about game archiving, game history. And then, I don't know, I guess they're gone. I guess it's over. So, gosh, I don't know. What do you even say when a huge institution like that is no more? It kind of reminds me a little bit of like E3 going away. E3 was such a huge monumental thing in the games industry, at least here in America, for so long. It was just like an institution. And I felt the same way about Game Informer. So now both of those things are gone, and we are just, I don't know, in a whole new world. So I'm pouring one out right now, pouring out a 40 for Game Informer, and my best wishes and best of luck to everybody who is no longer employed there. Hopefully they will be, back on their feet in no time onto bigger and better things. So there you go. That's all I have for housekeeping this week. And just before I get to the main portion of the show here, just a quick reminder, if you like this show, you like listening to the show, you want to help this show, you can certainly do that by going to patreon.com/the So Videogames podcast. Every little bit helps. Even $1 helps with the cost of hosting and such, and I pay that bill every single month out of my own pocket. So thank you, of course, to people who already subscribe. You guys are all my heroes. Anybody who joined in the Patreon already, I love you so much, and I really appreciate you putting your money where your ears is. Also, heads up, there is a So Videogames Discord, which any listener is more than welcome to join, free of charge. If you want to join up and continue the conversation after the show, just shoot me an email and I will send you all the details and we shall welcome you aboard. Okay, that's it for the preamble. Let's just get right to the main portion of the show. If you listen to the show, you already know I like to start things off with circlebacks. This is where I cover a game I have talked about in a previous episode, except I don't go into as much detail. I don't give you all the background and the systems and all that stuff. We've talked about it before, so if you want to hear more, the official rundown of each game can be found in the archive. If you click on them over at gamecritics.com, every little note section tells you which game we talk about, so you can always go back there and get the full scoop. So just one circle back this week, because honestly, it's been a really, really, really busy week. Doing game stuff is not what pays my bills. I have at least one or two other gigs that happen outside of games, and this was a killer week for that. I noticed that I was really kind of struggling to find the time to play anything, let alone like my usual gonzo game coverage for the show. So my only circle back this week is back to Dungeons of Hinterberg. You guys have heard me talk about it a lot. I have been talking about it a lot in the Discord, So Videogames, and more specifically over at the Gaming in the Wild Discord, who is not affiliated with the show, although they are great people. and I spend a lot of time over in their Discord. It's one of the best Discords I'm a part of. Strongly recommend anybody go over there. Check out the show. The show is awesome, run by John over in Reykjavik, and the people in his Discord are a fantastic group of folks. Costs $1 to get in on that, which I think is like a hell of a fucking bargain. So absolutely worth it. Anyway, been talking a lot about Dungeons of Hinterberg, circling back on it now. Easily, again, one of my top 10 of the year. I am just so enamored with this title. It is third-person action adventure with a kind of a Persona-like social element to it. And on the surface, it just seems kind of like an action-y game, like no big deal, what's going on. But really, it is so smart and so well considered. There's a series of 25 dungeons that you have to go through, and each one is different than the last. They all have kind of a neat trick to them. The story of the game is that it's set in the real world, and you go to these dungeons as kind of a vacation. So there's like real-world elements like angst about your job, the stress of being a person in the world today. How do you deal with that? And like, getting to meet friends and stuff. It kind of blends so many cool elements, and it all works really well. And I think what really, really makes it stand out, it is like almost an entirely friction-free experience. There is so much quality of life going on here. It's just like indescribable. I mean, every time you think you want to be able to do something because it would be nice to do that thing, you basically can do that thing because the developers already thought about it. Fast travel system in this game is freaking great. The menu system is really clear. UI is clean. Quest system is really easy to understand. Map markers are easy to understand. The maps are great. I mean, like literally everything about this feels super polished, easy to use. I think my only issue is like, I think maybe the outline of one of the text boxes in one of your equipment screens could be a little bit darker. I mean, dude, what a micro complaint is that, right? Like I had to like struggle to even think about something to complain about. So Dungeons of Hinterberg is fucking awesome. If you haven't played it, you got to give it a shot. I know it doesn't seem like, anything world shattering at first glance, but it's just so smart. It's so well put together. It's so frictionless. And on top of that, I think the story is actually great. It's a little bit of a slow burn. You got to give it a little bit of time. But I think it's just the way you talk to people, the things you say, the way they blend real life elements and fantasy elements. And when you finally discover what's going on with the dungeons, how that all unravels, it's just fucking chef's kiss fantastic. Dungeons of Hinterberg is the absolute shit. It's so good. Absolutely going to be on my top 10 this year for sure. It is a lock. I'm going to spoil my own game of the year episode right here. Now, I'm not saying it's my game of the year. I'm not saying that, but it will be guaranteed in my top 10. Absolutely. Like nothing can shake it. It's so good. So I'm playing it on Game Pass right now, playing it for quote unquote free. If you got Game Pass, you got no excuse not to jump on that and give that a shot. The only thing I will say was the only kind of grousing I've heard from people about this game, and most people I've talked to love it, but the only grousing is from people who have come to it and their brains are kind of like in permanent Souls mode. You know what I'm saying? Like where they expect every single game to have the exact same level of stamina-based combat and combos and tight controls and all that stuff. And that's just not every game. It doesn't have to be every game. I don't want every game to be like that. So the only people I've heard who have been even remotely unhappy with Hinterberg are people who kind of expect it to be more of a Souls-like experience. And it's not. It doesn't claim to be. It never said that it was. I think people are kind of just putting that on it. So, readjust your expectations. Let's get back to a time and a place when not every game was a Souls-like, and we can play a game that's just kind of action-y, action-based. It's a great balance between action, puzzle solving, a little bit of like story elements, social elements. It's just the absolute shit. Dungeons of Hinterberg is tops. Circling back on that, still a mega thumbs up. And that's my only circle back this week. We are just about to move on to brand new stuff I've never covered before. Starting now with Mists of Noyah, Noyah. Full disclosure, I was sent a code for this game, as well as the other games I'm going to be talking about on the show later today, so just heads up on that. All right, Mists of Noyah, what is it? Honestly, I'm not sure. I saw the trailer. It had some really nice sprite work, looked kind of like a 2D action-y sort of thing that I was kind of in the mood for, so the publisher was kind enough to send a code over. So I guess I'm a little bit befuddled by this one. As the game begins, you have five different characters to choose from. They each handle differently. I just chose the first one, who was an archer, just to just randomly pick someone and jump into it. And it's 2D, pixel-based, hand-drawn art. I will say the pixel work is really nice. I think the animation is really nice. I think the controls of this 2D action game are good. They feel good. They feel tight. The jumping feels good. I mean, it just, there was no fuss with controlling the character. But past that, I don't really have a lot of positive to say about it, unfortunately. As you begin the game, there's like no story, no intro story. I don't know who my character was. I don't know what the objectives are. And it prompted me to like create a world. And I was like, what's going on? Like, is this not handcrafted? It seems like you generate a world based on a seed and then it kind of just throws some stuff in there. I was a little bit confused as to what the structure of this experience was. So you jump in and you're just like in a forest. And the first objective is something like collect 25 wood, like crafting, right? So that was a little bit strange. I wasn't expecting that. So I walk around, I collect some wood, and then they just ask you to craft some stuff. So no story, no objectives, no narrative, no overarching goal. I'm just watching this really nice sprite work as I'm jumping around this forest, shooting slimes and other animals and monsters. But I don't know why. Like, I'm not really sure what my goal even is. So no tutorials of any kind whatsoever. I start to look into the menus to see what's going on. And there's just like tons of menus, tons of like skill tree and like perks and stuff. Just like a bunch of stuff thrown in there with like no rhyme or reason to it. Like no intro whatsoever. So I didn't get much further than that because honestly, that's not how I like to approach a game. And I'm a little bit confused by this. It feels like the developers have put together a good pile of systems. Like they've got some good movement, good 2D action going on here. It looks appealing. It looks screenshots. It's very appealing looking. But then you're like, what? Like you're leveling up, you're crafting, you're running around. Like, what is the goal? Why am I here? Why should I care? It doesn't seem like the developers put any effort whatsoever into the interstitial stuff or the window dressing that elevates a basic system into being like a game experience. I want to have an adventure. I want to have a reason to play. I want to get to know characters. I want to have something to latch onto mentally. I mean, there's like 9 billion games out there right now. I could go to Steam, close my eyes and, throw a virtual dart and land on any number of games that are excellent experiences. But I need something more than that. The competition is so high these days. Just creating something that runs and controls well is not even remotely near enough to deliver a good experience. So I guess I'm just confused as to why this was launched the way it is. It doesn't feel finished. It doesn't feel considered. It just seems like a bunch of systems that somebody completed and then put into a game and then launched the game. But there's nothing else that makes it feel like a completed, polished vision, a fun adventure, an enticing series of events, appealing quests, nothing. It's just like, hey, here's this stuff we created, go for it and play it. I mean, my answer is no, I'm not going to do that. I need more than that. So I didn't get too far with Mists of Noyah, and I am quite confused as to why somebody would put all this time and effort into making all these menus, all these systems, all this combat, all this sprite work, and then just stop before reaching the finish line. I don't know if this is a Kickstarter or what. Maybe they ran out of money, or maybe the developers just quit and moved on to something else. It's just a very strange experience that just feels just completely underbaked and not ready for prime time in any way. So bummer on that one, because it did look pretty good in trailers and screenshots. So Mists of Noyah, that is a definite thumbs down from me. Moving on, I was gifted a code from the publisher Ratalaika. If you listen to the show, you know that there's a definite relationship between Ratalaika and the show. I'm not going to get into the whole thing, but basically they have snookered us so many times because they make some of the most fire trailers out there. And then when you play the game, they're usually quite difficult or unbalanced or unpolished or something. So I've spent more money than I care to admit on Ratalaika games because they sucker me every single time. But this time, that didn't exactly happen. I think this is a little bit of a left turn for them. Aero the Acro-Bat. You may have heard of it if you delve into 16-bit stuff from back in the day. I am 99% sure it's a Super Nintendo game. And through the magic of podcasting technology, I have done my research in the 1 second since I just mentioned it. It is indeed a Super Nintendo game and also was released for the Sega Genesis back in 1993 by Iguana Entertainment and published by Sunsoft, who I don't believe is around anymore, but they were a big publisher back in the day. This is a 2D 16-bit pixel-based I hesitate to call it an action platformer, but I guess that's probably the closest to what it actually is. Basically, you take a bat, his name is Aero, kind of anthropomorphized, and he is in a circus environment for some reason. You control him. I don't want to even say left to right because you kind of just move all around in these 2D levels. You can jump, you can hover, you can dash in the air, and then you can collect stars and throw them as a weapon. And I don't mean like shuriken. I mean like an actual star, like a 5-pointed kind of like star. To give you an example of the kind of contemporaries that Aero released alongside, I'm taking a quick look at Wikipedia here. So in the same year, Street Fighter II, Mortal Kombat, these aren't home systems, Mortal Kombat, Star Fox, Disney's Aladdin, Secret of Mana, Super Mario Collection, also known as All Stars, Dragon Ball Z, Super Mario Kart, that kind of a thing back in the day, Sonic the Hedgehog 2, Streets of Rage 2, etc., etc., etc. So that gives you an idea of the, the time and period that this game is from. Now, I'm old enough to have been playing and buying and enjoying games back then. I think I was lucky enough to be born at a period when video games had just themselves been born, and I've been in the field basically almost as long as the entire video game field has been a thing since it's been in existence. So I remember Aero the Acro-Bat back in the day, and I remember it was not well liked back then. It was pretty poorly received, kind of a joke almost, because it was kind of seen as an also-ran to, obviously like Sonic the Hedgehog. I think people kind of trying to cash in on the furry mascot sort of angle. So I didn't remember much good about it, but that's been a long time. I mean, 1993 was a long time ago. So when I got the offer to play this again, I'm like, you know what? I don't really remember much about it. And, it would be interesting to revisit this after all these years to see, does it hold up? Does it not hold up? What are my thoughts on it after all this time? So let me just say, okay, so two things. This game is both wonderful and terrible, and I'll explain that. So how is it terrible? Well, the game is terrible. It was terrible back then. It's terrible now. The people designing this game didn't really understand how to make a game. And that's kind of interesting, right? Like, it's a time capsule. So you can go back way, way, way back to 1993 when the industry was not nearly as polished and as practiced and as knowledgeable as it is now. Back then, people were still putting out really like wildly experimental titles because they just didn't know what worked. We were kind of making the transition from arcades to the home consoles, and we didn't understand what makes a good experience for that. What do players want? What works on your couch as opposed to in a dark, smoky hall for 25 cents a pop? What are the differences there? And at first we didn't really know, right? So we're still kind of figuring things out. And this is a great way to kind of go back and see how clueless we were back then, because this game is so awful in so many ways. It's genuinely terrible. I think the controls are weird. I think his movement, Aero the Acro-Bat's movement, is strange. He jumps up, but then when you jump again, it's not a traditional double jump. He kind of dashes, and it goes at like an upwards angle or a downwards angle, and he can spin into enemies, but it just feels a little bit awkward. He also can hover, but the hover is completely worthless. Like, you hold the hover button and he stays in place for a second, but I don't know why. I have literally no idea what purpose it serves. It doesn't let you get further. It doesn't let you go higher. It doesn't save you from spikes because all it does is pause you in the air for like a second or two. Not sure what that was all about. And it just, there's like all sorts of like rough edges that were very, very common back then. Like lack of communication about level objectives. Like, for example, this game, you have to like look at the manual, and it comes with a digital manual, and it'll say, okay, here's your objective for like level 1. Like, it doesn't even tell you in the level itself what you're supposed to do. Like, that is an archaic, antique way of thinking about game design, right? Like, oh, well, the player's gonna have a manual. We'll tell them everything they need to know in the manual, and they're gonna read this like on paper, and then they're gonna go play the game. They'll know what to do. Like, that is so crazy to us today, right? But back then, I mean, it made a lot more sense because games came with manuals all the time. You could expect a person to read something and do their homework before playing the game. That's just not what we do these days. We know there are better ways to do that, talking about like in-game tutorials and flagging players to catch on to certain things, the way that we design levels and mechanics and stuff. It's all just like more intuitive and natural, or should be anyway. So it's a real trip to go back to this and see what they thought was like good design. Although, to be fair, this wasn't a great game even back then, right? Like, Nintendo was already like far outshining what they achieved here. So was Sega as well. But it is just interesting to go back to this. And so in the first level, I was so stuck in the first level, I actually had to YouTube a walkthrough because I could not figure out how to make any progress. There's no map. And so when you're in the level, you can go up and down, left and right, and there's various platforms, but there's no indicators of where you're going or what you're doing or what your objectives are. So you're kind of just like let loose to walk around and figure things out, or not, as the case may be. I didn't figure anything out. So apparently you had to find these platforms that had stars on them and then jump on them and make them disappear. And that was like your objective in level 1. I don't know how I was supposed to know that. There's no communication about that whatsoever. Making platforms disappear is not a common trope of platforming games. It's not a common trope of games in the 80s. It was just like randomly thrown in. To make things worse, in the first level, to get to certain parts of the area, you have to just walk through walls. Like there's no indication whatsoever you can walk through these walls. And one of the walls you couldn't just walk through. You had to jump up at a height. So maybe you push up against the wall at first and it seems like a solid wall. But then if you jump, you'll know that there's an invisible hole a little bit above your character's height. I don't know how you're supposed to know that other than brute force, frustrated searching of every nook and cranny of every level, which was a thing we did back then, and it was fucking miserable. I don't miss it for a moment. So that, and then at one point in the level, I was so stuck. I didn't know what to do. But I watched this guy playing a walkthrough on YouTube. Thank you, whoever you were, because you saved my life. You walk to a corner. There's nothing there. Literally nothing there. It's a platform and an empty corner. You stand there for like 5 seconds or something with nothing going on. No notification, no flags, nothing. You just stand there. And if you stand there for 5 seconds, a teleport opens up and it takes you back to the main part of the level. How the fuck am I supposed to know that? How's anybody supposed to know that? That's the kind of bullshit game design that we put up with all the time back then, and I fucking hate, and I don't miss it a bit. And this is like a really good example of all the mistakes that we made back in the day. It's terrible. This game is terrible to play. It was terrible back then. It's triple terrible now. But this game is also amazing. Why? Well, number one, like I just said, I think it's a really fascinating view into game design history. If you are into trends back then, philosophy, like the curve of game design over the years, anything like that, historical stuff, time capsule type gameplay. This is a really great example of that. This is a great example of a game that kind of bombed back then, but why did it bomb? What were they doing? What was going on here? What did these people think was good game design? It's really fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. The fact that anybody thought this kind of design was ever tolerable is just mind-blowing, but I can state for a fact, having been someone who grew up in that era, it happened all the time. And Aero is hardly the only example of miserable design like this. I can think of many, many, many other games where they would pull bullshit like this, like hidden paths and walls you could walk through and items that were hidden out of freaking nowhere for no reason and all this kind of bullshit like that just doesn't fly these days. It just doesn't make any sense these days. So it's interesting from that perspective, but what makes it even better, and the awesome part about this game, is that this particular package has received a lot of love in terms of making it be a retro package that knows it's a retro package. They're not just putting this game out. They also included a bunch of like supporting materials that I think are great. And if you're going to put out a game like this, this is exactly the way to do it. So number one, they added a whole bunch of like modern amenities. There's a save state that wasn't there before. You can adjust. I think there's an invincibility toggle. I think there's infinite dashing if you want to attack people. There's a rewind and a fast forward. I mean, there's all sorts of like modern stuff that we can do that make this game 1,000 times more playable than it ever was back in the day. So that's great. If you're going to release a retro game, please acknowledge that games were like objectively terrible back then and give us modern conveniences that make them more playable. So from that perspective, if you don't want to suffer and hate yourself playing through this miserable experience, you don't have to. Turn on all the toggles, just go through it, just see what's there, just learn about it, right? Like don't punish yourself, but learn it. So I think that's great. They also include, I believe there's a soundtrack player, and I think there's also History Vault, where you have the manual. They scan the entire manual so you can read every single page that you would have gotten if you bought the game back in the day, which is great. You have notes, design documents, you have artwork, you have promotional materials, like posters, like basically every single thing that ever had Aero the Acro-Bat's sorry face on it is in the collection, which is awesome. So I think this game sucks ass, but at the same time, I think this is a really excellent package for archival purposes and historical purposes. And if you just want to learn about what games were like back then, this is like the all-in-one package. So if you're going to put out a game like this, it's awesome because I think just from that perspective, it's worth having just to get all this stuff. If you like to learn about that stuff and see that stuff, it's great. So the game sucks, but I think the package is wonderful. So thumbs up on that, like big time thumbs up. They didn't have to do all that. I've seen a number of ports recently that didn't even go half as far as this one did. And I really appreciate that they put the time in, they put the effort in. This game, honestly, wasn't really deserving all that effort, but I'm really glad they did. And it makes the package itself really appealing from an archival standpoint. So from that aspect, I think it's a big, big, big thumbs up and very cool that they went to all that work and made it so playable and accessible and educational. So excellent work there. Kudos all around to the team who did that. That's great. And for every game in the future that gets released like this is like the standard. I think every game should have at least this much stuff, if not more. So kudos on that. Game blows, but great package. So Aero the Acro-Bat, I played it on PS5. As you can clearly tell, kind of a mixed response to it, but as a package, pretty fucking cool. So there you go. Next game is called the Lullaby of Life. Now I need to be very clear with you. This game is, at the time of recording, still under embargo, but I do have permission to talk about it in an unscored preview sense. Let me be clear. This is not a review in any way, shape, or form. This is an unscored preview impressions piece. Just got to be real clear about that. Okay, Lullaby of Life. What is it? It is a 2D music/puzzle game that definitely wants to be more of an experience than like a legit puzzler or action type thing. And that's totally fine. I think that's great. I actually really like these when they come out. I don't quite know exactly what's going on, but you're kind of like some kind of like cosmic thing that lives out in space. And like, it seems like the world is kind of being created or the universe is kind of being created. You're a little blob that has a couple of eyeballs on it. And the developers, I want to give special kudos to them because they really clearly understand how to create an experience without any voiceovers or text. This is a completely text-free experience. There are tutorials and stuff like that, but they do it all within the game via gameplay, which is really hard to pull off. It is so hard to do well. I've seen so many developers attempt this and stumble and fail, but they really get it right. They exactly know what to do to get their communication across, to get their ideas made clear, to get their gameplay aspects manifest. It's really wonderful, and I want to give special praise to that. So you play this blob with eyeballs, and you're kind of in this weird abstract cosmic space, and when you push a button, like sound radiates out of you. It's a little hard to describe because everything is so abstract, but basically you're flying around in these channels in space, and you pick up other space creatures like yourself. They all have a different icon on them. And as you go through these channels in space, which is kind of like a series of, series of tubes or something. It's like the internet. You bring these extra blobs with you. And when you get to like a locked gate, you have to play your notes in a certain order. And if you get them right, then the gate opens and you move on. So that sounds really basic and reductive. And actually the experience is much better than that. I'm not really doing it justice here, but it's beautiful, it's colorful, it flows, and the puzzles are all really well designed. Like none of them are really like brain busting. It's really just about getting you in the game and like moving these blobs around in a really fluid way and flying through space, being star stuff, and then collecting these friends as you go and playing like these musical notes that kind of like harmonize off each other. It's just a really cool vibe. Once you get through the first area, like all sorts of like colors and shapes, and you kind of warp to this other place. And I'm sorry I'm being so vague, but like that's really kind of what it is. Like it's just like impressions and kind of no real defined sense of like Earth being created or anything like that. It's just like you're just out here vibing. Like this is like a vibes game to the max, and I think it works. It works really well. Having a really good time with it. I'm guessing this is probably a pretty short experience. I got through, I want to say, the first 2.5 levels out of 5 in like one sitting, and the puzzles were fine. Like I could easily understand what was going on, how to play the notes, what to do. There's a little bit of complexity there. So you're not just like brainlessly tapping buttons. Like you do have to figure some things out and kind of navigate these space levels. But it's all pleasant. Like they're not trying to stump you. They're not trying to really super challenge you. I think they want you to vibe with the energy and the flow and the lights and the colors. And it just works really well. I love the visual communication. I love the way they teach you how to play the game in this organic way. It's a solid formula. The music is really transcendent, and I feel like it really fits the themes. So overall, like I really dig it. I like it a lot. It really kind of reminds me of The Artful Escape in many ways. If anyone remembers, that game came out a couple years ago, which was similar to this, like really about the vibes, about the music, about just getting into a flow state, kind of just going with the experience, not really super about platforming or puzzling or anything like that. So I feel like the Lullaby of Life is in very much the same basket. They just want you to kind of vibe out, feel some bliss, enjoy the colors and the movement, and just kind of just, this kind of like synesthesia kind of experience where you're kind of just in the whole thing and it's all blending together in your head, and it all just makes you just really like zen out. So yeah, definitely a thumbs up for sure. I like it a lot. I'll be trying to roll credits on this pretty soon. I bet one more good sit down and I'll be through it, and it'll just be a really fun moment in time. Definitely recommend that one if you like music games, if you like The Artful Escape or anything along those lines, for sure. So thumbs up. Final game of the show is Punch Club 2 Fast Forward. Now, this is not a new game. I believe it originally came out in 2023, fairly early on. This comes to us from Lazy Bear Games, who I am low-key a really big fan of. I first encountered them with Graveyard Keeper, which I think is absolutely an unsung masterpiece. I need to come back to it. It's a huge game. It's kind of like Stardew Valley, but with corpses and the undead and graveyards, but with also like a really dark nihilistic sense of humor to it. Got to get back to that. That's what really turned me on to them in the first place. And because I knew they made this, that's what made me jump into Punch Club 2. Now, I did play this last year when it first dropped, and I believe I talked about it here on the show a year ago. So you can probably dig in the archives and find my original thoughts on it. If memory serves, I did like it a lot back then. I didn't finish. It's actually much like Graveyard Keeper. It's much longer than you think it might be. Pretty nuanced, like a lot of content to it. But basically, it is a 2D pixel type game where you play a son of a boxer. And that was actually the content in Punch Club #1, which I keep meaning to get back to and play, but I haven't got around to. So anyway, the graphics, #1, are great. The pixel art is really marvelous in this. Lots of detail, tons of animation. I think it just looks brilliant. But you have to train, like you're really broke. You live at home with your mom, and your dream is to like rise in the ranks of your local fighting tournament. You can do punches, kicks, that kind of thing. But it's also like a sim, and it's also kind of like a clicker. Like you're not controlling it like a fighting game. What you do is you manage the guy's training. So at home, he's got like this busted ass treadmill, a punching bag that's not any good. He's got a mat to do push-ups on, that kind of a thing. So you start with like nothing. You guys are dead ass broke, and you got to get a job. So you get a job. And in this world, it's a weird mashup of like sci-fi and techno stuff and just like absurd comedy and like all this like really weird, irreverent things. So you to get your first job with people who look like they're escapees from Dune, and you're kind of punching sandworms in order to get juice out of them to make, I don't know, stuff out of it, make food stuff out of it. So that's the kind of thing. Like when you go to a noodle restaurant later on, it looks like it's out of Blade Runner, right? And you go to the sewers, and there's animals down there that look like they're the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So it's like one little satire situation after another. But at the core of it, there's a really good experience where you're constantly managing the growth of your fighter, balancing that with the money you have to earn to stay alive, balancing that with time pressure elements like signing up for tournaments, making sure you get to these tournaments on time, making sure you get to work on time, making sure that you can, make your ends meet, keep your fridge full, also work out, advance in the ranks. And there's all sorts of places to go, all sorts of things to do. And there's lots of like side quests, like a million jillion side quests. Most of them have jokes associated with them, and almost all the jokes land. I think they're pretty clever. I think the writers at Lazy Bear are quite good. That was also true in Graveyard Keeper as well. I really love that dark, nihilistic sense of humor that they're so good at. So you basically take your fighter around, train him, and when you do this, he's got various meters. Like this is a meter ass game. Meters on top of meters, and more meters after that, where he's got a hunger meter, an energy meter, a motivation meter, stamina meter. Like there's meters just like completely all over the place. And I will say, if there's any one slight complaint about this game, I think they could have walked you through the beginning of it a little bit more. It's a pretty stringent experience where there's not a whole lot of room for error. I think it's pretty easy to end up broke and end up like leveled up wrong. I mean, you can always recover from it. There are systems where you can go back and do some stuff for free, or like, re-level your guy or whatever. But you can get into like kind of a bad zone for a while where it just seems like nothing's really going your way. And that's a bit of a bummer. I think a little bit of a stronger start would be good for this game. And it's funny because I played this originally a year ago, like I said, and I really liked it at the time. I got pretty far. I had to put it down for review reasons to cover some other stuff, but I came back to it. I'm like, okay, no problem. Jump back in. And it was weird. Like I had forgotten so much about it. And so I was basically coming to it brand new, fresh from scratch. And it just kind of hit me again, like how much I needed like more clarity on certain systems. It all came back eventually, and I'm like, okay, that's right. And I forgot about this, and oh, okay, that's right. I do this other thing over here. But there's a lot to it. It's not the simplest game to just jump in and pick up. So now that I'm playing through it, it eventually got to the point now where I have like my job that I go to. I've got my workout training that I do. I'm learning new moves that you assign in a menu system, kind of like a perks skill tree kind of a thing. And it's really like keeping me up at night because I just can't put it down. Once I get in the zone with this, now that I'm past the roughness of the intro, it is like the ultimate, like just one more thing game where you're like, well, I should really go to bed right now. But if I just do this one more thing, I can get this one more point in my strength stat. And if I get one more point there, I can probably beat up the guy at the gas station. And if I beat that guy up, then I can get the extra money from when I work at the gas station. And if I get that money, then I can buy the training thing that I can put in my house. And if I get that training thing, then I can be stronger for the next time I go to the gym. And if I get that unlocked, like it just goes on and on and on and on and on, where everything is interconnected. All the systems like feed into each other. And it's like impossible to put this thing down once I get started. It's deadly. It's deadly because I end up staying up like an hour or two later than I mean to, because I'm just like, okay, one more thing. And every time you get that one more thing, like two more things open up and you're like, oh, okay, I want to go do this thing and this other thing and keep this other thing. And it's just like this infinite loop of like, stay awake until 4:00 in the morning because you really want to get your fighter in the right shape and you really want to achieve that other side quest and you really want to get that last perk because that's going to make everything better, and it just comes together so well. I really like Punch Club 2 Fast Forward a lot. I think it's excellent. I think Lazy Bear really put out some solidly good games. I'm going to check out the rest of their catalog. I think they've put out a couple I've never tried that are probably PC only. Playing this on the Switch, by the way, which is a perfect fit for the Switch. I think it's great. So, but it's great. There's laughs. There's lots of interesting side quests. I think the stat management is just really addictive. If you like those kind of games where you're managing a person, watching numbers get bigger, trying to like min-max certain systems. If you like that kind of stuff, Punch Club 2 is fucking awesome. Now, why am I playing this now if I played it a year ago? Good question. I was contacted by PR to let me know that Punch Club 2 is getting brand new DLC where you have a new robot character that you train, that your main character trains in addition to doing their own training. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Now, just as a bit of context, I didn't finish Graveyard Keeper. I've started it like 3 times and I love it. It's awesome. It's a really long game and I haven't finished it. But Graveyard Keeper had a bunch of DLC, and every time they put out a DLC, it was really significant. Like they would add like entirely new systems, entirely new quests, like whole bunch of stuff. Like at one point you could own your own inn. You had zombies that you could put together as an army that worked for you. There was like a whole other region you could go to. Like, so every time new DLC came to Graveyard Keeper, I was like, oh snap. Like, okay, that's an event for me this week and I got to get in on that and find it out. So Lazy Bear does some great DLC. This is the first DLC they've done for Punch Club 2. So that was what got me back into it. I'm like, okay, if it's anything like Graveyard Keeper, it's going to be something worth paying attention to. So saying that, I didn't remember where I left off in Punch Club 2. Like I said, I haven't played it for a year. So I'm like, I'm going to start fresh, and you can't access the DLC until you get to a certain point. So I'm like, well, let me just start now. And I'll make my way there. And then by the time I get there, I'll have it ready for the podcast. I didn't get that far. Also, PR forgot to send me the code. We talked about it last week. And I think they just must have started their weekend a little early. So they forgot to even send me the DLC code. But that doesn't matter because I'm back in to Punch Club 2. I'm definitely going to finish it this time. Super addicted as much as I ever was. Looking forward to just like really going the distance. And I really, really strongly recommend it to anybody who is a fan of like sim games or like these training management type games. I think this one is really great. The humor, the graphics, the systems, the depth, the complexity. Lazy Bear is definitely doing some great work over there. And I will circle back on the DLC regarding this new robot when I get a chance to do that. So PR, if you're listening, send me that code. Yo, I got to get started on that ASAP. All right. Definitely a big, big, big thumbs up for Punch Club 2 Fast Forward. And also a huge thumbs up for Graveyard Keeper as well. If you like Stardew Valley, if you like that kind of a thing, but you want it a little darker, a little nastier, a little more nihilistic, Graveyard Keeper is just fantastic. So, all right, folks, that is all of the games I'll be covering today. To circle back, I talked about Dungeons of Hinterberg, Mists of Noyah, Aero the Acro-Bat, The Lullaby of Life, and Punch Club 2 Fast Forward. That is going to do it for the games coverage. Now, as I said at the beginning of the show, this is episode 400, and I have a pile of questions that I took from listeners of the show and from folks in Discord and over at the Gaming in the Wild Discord as well. So thank you all for everybody who sent in the questions. I'm going to be getting to those now. So some are game related, some are not. A lot of them are just personal stuff. A lot of music questions in here. So if you're not interested in that, feel free to bounce. It's just going to be that for the end of the show. We're going to wrap. But if you'd like to find out a little bit more about me, a little bit more about the show, a little bit more about my taste, you're more than welcome to do that. And that is going to be starting right here and right now. Okay, the episode 400 personal section. Couple questions here. Starting it off with real Dave Jackson, who is really real. I do know and can confirm that he is a real person. And also, I owe him a podcast. Just full disclosure, I was supposed to guest on his show a while ago, and I completely just like crapped out, like extremely just let him down, and I felt so bad about it. We were supposed to podcast about Road Warden. That's what it was, Road Warden. I've been hearing a lot of props for Road Warden, text-based visual novel, or not, I guess it's just a novel game. There's not a lot of visuals there, but a novel game on PC. Been hearing tons about it, and I agreed to be on a show to talk about it. And just like to keep it really real with you guys, as I started playing Road Warden, number one, I didn't like it very much, and number two, it kept putting me to sleep. It was just like a lot of heavy duty reading, and I was playing it at bedtime because that's when I had my laptop out. And I just like, I struggled and I couldn't get through it. And I was like, oh my God, I got to get through it. I've never let anybody down like this. I feel terrible. I suck. But God's honest truth, I just could not get through it. It was not something that clicked with me despite liking so many other visual novels. And I don't know. I just didn't have it in me. I couldn't summon the energy. I caved. And so I had to apologize to Dave then, and I'm apologizing to him now, like public apology time. Fully mea culpa-ing right now. I totally dropped the ball on that, Dave. So if you ever can find it in your heart to give me a second chance sometime, I would like to make it up to you at some point. So there. I've got to get that off my chest because I still feel guilty about it sometimes. Okay, anyway, Dave's question didn't have anything to do with Road Warden or me cutting out on his show. Not at all, because he's a gentleman and a scholar. No, his question was, is there a game that you find comfort in that might surprise people? My example for this is always Soulsborne or Elden Ring. Okay, so good question, Dave. Going to answer it for you right here and right now. So one thing to know about me is that I almost never replay games ever. I'm always like, I need to keep moving forward. I like to have new experiences. Once I have played through a game, I just don't experience it the same way. And I know that's true for everybody, but like sometimes the thing that really gets me through an experience is like just not knowing what's coming up, like wanting to know what the story twists are, wanting to know what the new game mechanics are, wanting to know what the next boss is or something. That curiosity is a big motivator for me. And once I don't have that curiosity anymore, I find it really hard to stay engaged with games. So almost never do I replay any game. So the idea of a comfort game is pretty foreign to me. There's almost nothing that I keep around and go back to. Now, I don't think that counts with something like Marvel Puzzle Quest or Marvel Snap, like games that I keep on my phone that I've put hundreds of hours into, because I just play those like when I'm standing in line at the bank, or like when I'm stuck in traffic, or, you know, when I'm 5 minutes before I go to bed or something. That's not really quite what I think of when I think of a comfort game. And I don't think that's how you mean this question, but I do have an answer for you. So despite the fact that I never replay games, and I don't like, you know, I just don't have time to replay them, even aside from the fact that I don't want to. But there is one game that I do find myself coming back to. I think about it all the time, and I will sometimes start up a new game just because, and I will know that I will not finish it. I'll just play it for a little while because I really, really enjoy it so much, and I will just play that for a couple hours and then be done, and I won't touch it again for a couple months. And whenever I feel the need to revisit, I will do that. So I think to me, that's probably the closest I come to a comfort game, and that game is Death Stranding. I'm sure that no one expected that, because I have been famously on record as saying the story in Death Stranding is flaming horseshit, which is true. The story in that game is phenomenally awful. I think Kojima is a very talented guy. I think he's a gameplay genius, but he is a miserable writer, and he doesn't know the first thing about crafting a good story. As an editor, I would pay almost any amount of money to be given free reign on the Death Stranding script and to be able to whip it into shape and to make something better out of it, because I know that I could, because it's terrible. But that said, the gameplay is just so sublime in that. There is something so relaxing and so, like, I don't want to call it low stakes because that kind of like undersells it, but something about just the simple idea of walking across this landscape, you know, making deliveries and stuff. That's cool too. But like just the idea of like point A to point B, you're walking. There's plenty of places in the game where there's no combat whatsoever. Get away from those fucking ghosts. I hate the ghosts. I finished that game. I think I've finished it twice. And I've played it more times than that. And I wish once you finish the game once, you can just turn off the fucking ghosts because they're just so annoying, and I don't like dealing with them. But like the first couple levels of Death Stranding, where it's basically just like green area, barely ever rains, and you don't have to deal with ghosts very often. You're just out there with Sam and his boots, sometimes the motorcycle or whatever, but mostly just the walking part where you've got your little trailer behind you, and you're just like lugging boxes, and like nothing's going on. You're just like walking, slowly going over hills, looking out for ditches, and just just walking, and then the music kicks in at some point. Something about that I just find so engrossing on a mechanical level, on a psychological level. Something about just playing that, the idea that you're just out there doing your thing, feeling peace, feeling quiet, just being out there doing what Sam does. It's just so appealing to me. I keep coming back to it over and over and over, and I think that's probably the closest I'm going to come to a comfort game. So that's it. I think just walking in the hills and valleys and green spaces of Death Stranding with a couple of boxes on my back. Not so much that you're like toppling over 5 seconds, but a couple boxes. So you got something to do, and you're just going from point A to point B. I often think of the initial starting valley where it's really peaceful. It's just kind of a short hike, and you're kind of just like walking up and down and over, and you cross a little stream or something. I don't know, man. Something about that just like hits me in all the right spots. I think it's a fucking genius game. I would have never thought that game would have lived up to the hype when we were still in the hype cycle pre-release, but boy, it really did. It really surpassed my expectations, and Kojima really delivered. Not in the way that he thinks he delivered, but in the mechanical sense, he absolutely delivered for sure. So Death Stranding is probably a comfort game for me if there ever was one. Next question comes from John, he of Gaming in the Wild, the originator and podcast host of Gaming in the Wild, one of my favorite podcasts going these days. Please go check it out. He says, he's got a couple of questions here. He says, it's interesting that you ended up mostly on Xbox this generation. What consoles were your mains in previous generations? Good question. Yes, I am mostly an Xbox gamer this generation. Just to fill that in a little bit, I think a lot of it had to do, honestly, with the price and availability at the time when, I think pretty sure COVID was kind of still going on and stuff. But like you couldn't get, a PS5 anywhere. Like you just they weren't available. Like they were going for like astronomical amounts on eBay. They just weren't a thing. And so by default, what was available was the Xbox. Xbox X was available, but not super available. And the Xbox S was pretty easily available. So I think just from that perspective, I jumped aboard, although I have been an Xbox person in the past, as you'll find out in just a second. So I think that was a big factor. Also, I'm not a fan of the PS5 form, the shape, the weird shape it's got, the curvy thing and the fins, and it's whatever, dude. Like, give me a break. Anyway, okay. Answering your question for realsies, though. So starting at the very beginning, Atari 2600, that was my home console of choice. Although I didn't have much choice because it was that. I think the competitor at the time was Intellivision or something like that. ColecoVision, perhaps. We went with Atari because it had Pac-Man and it had Qbert and all the other, games that my friends liked at the time. Soon after, I got a Vectrex. Still have it. Still works. Haven't played it in a long time. That wasn't really competing with anything. It was a kind of a weird offshoot all on its own. After that, the NES, the old school NES. Nobody I knew had a Sega Master System. It was not getting as much play. It wasn't getting as much attention or commercials. I looked at some of the games on the Master System back then, and none of them were really appealing to me. So went with NES. I mean, it was the juggernaut, right? It was the thing that really brought video games back to the fore in America back then. Video games were thought to be dead and a fad up until the NES happened. Whether or not that's true, I don't think it's true, but that was kind of the perception at the time, especially in reference to home consoles. Nobody thought home consoles had a future until the NES. So we jumped on board, and so many classic bangers back then. Super Mario, Legend of Zelda, Excite Bike, Kid Icarus, all those classics back then. Some hold up better than others, but that was certainly the way I was going to go. Nobody in their right mind was going to get a Sega Master System back then. No way. Following that, we enter the 16-bit wars of Super Nintendo versus Sega Genesis. Now, full disclosure, I had both, but only after a certain period of time. We started off with Super Nintendo because, we had such a good experience with the original NES. We wanted to continue that. We had, I think ActRaiser was on there. Lots of RPGs like Final Fantasy II. And what else did we have? We had And honestly, the game I played the most of probably is like Bass Pro Fishing. Sounds crazy, but at the time, I was living in a pretty rural area. I lived like literally 3 minutes walk away from a lake that was full of bass. And my best friend at the time in high school loved fishing. I loved fishing. We spent so many hours fishing, both freshwater and saltwater. And we would just like play like I think black bass, whatever it was called, black bass fishing or something like that. That got so many hundreds of hours from us playing on our Super Nintendo. We would just like sit there in my room or in his room, just playing over and over and over, catching bass. Like I don't know. It was just like a time and a place. You kind of had to be there. I don't think it would be really playable or even tolerable now, but back in the day, that was really scratching the itch for us, along with stuff like Street Fighter 2, Mortal Kombat, all that kind of stuff. So definitely SNES for sure. I did get a Genesis to play Sonic the Hedgehog, and eSWAT was one that I was very excited about. Altered Beast, which I was a fan of in the arcades, that kind of thing. It was fine. I don't think the Genesis was ever as good as Super Nintendo. Fight me if you wish, but that's just kind of my feeling on it, and I don't think I'm going to change that perception right now. After that, definitely PlayStation. PlayStation was the shit. Like, it was like moving into polygons in a way that was mind-blowing at the time. I mean, it looks really janky and awful and awkward now, but back then it was like fucking incredible. I remember going to a local consumer electronics show that was being held here in Seattle, and it was like on the news and everything, and that was the first time you could ever see a PlayStation in person and get a hands-on. There was like, the line was like a mile long. You could go through this line and like play a PlayStation that was locked up behind a glass case, and you know, you had a couple different games there. They had Jumping Flash and Toshinden, and both of those games like immediately sold me. I was like, holy shit, this is fucking incredible. I can't believe what these games are doing and what they look like. And it was genuinely incredible back then. There were a couple of the games that they had on display that I didn't really care about too much, but those two really spoke to me, and they really just convinced me to get the PlayStation when it was available, which is what I did. Moving on, my other prime console after that was PS2. Had such a great time with PlayStation. I wanted to keep that going. And PS2 was a fantastic console. So many amazing games on that I really just... Sky Odyssey, I think, was one that really stood out to me as being just really kind of next gen in that way, where you can take a plane, fly, do all these cool missions. I don't think anybody even remembers Sky Odyssey these days, but boy, it was really, really transformative for me back then. It just really, really sold me a lot. So PS2 for sure, all in on PS2, tons of experimental games there. From that point, went to the Xbox 360. PS3 was weird. At that point, PlayStation had been on top for too long. They had become full of hubris and pride and arrogance, and the PS3 was kind of like the height of that. You know, I think it was like one of the execs, I forget which guy, famously said like people would get a second job to be able to pay for the PS3. And at the time it came out, I want to say something like $600. That was like an unheard of amount at the time. And I just didn't think any of the games really appealed to me. I was like, fuck it, whatever. Went Xbox 360 and was really happy with it. Now, of course, the Xbox 360 had the Red Ring of Death, that whole debacle. I think ultimately I went through at least five, if not six Xbox 360s. They all red ringed on me at one point or another. So I just got like in the habit of like getting one, playing it for 6 or 9 months, sending it back out when it red ringed, getting a new one, and like, you know, going through the whole repair process and stuff. It's not like I was buying a new one. I would just like repair it and stuff. So it just was a clusterfuck, but it really shows the strength of the console and the games, especially like Xbox Live Indie. When that happened, that really just like busted open the indie market for people in the home space. That was when we were just starting to download stuff. The idea that you could download an entire game on your console was wild. And it was like a small game. Like I remember playing like Wick. Wick is one of my favorite games from back then. It actually was my avatar for a long time on Xbox. You know, like Feeding Frenzy, Cloning Clyde, Trials, the original Trials HD, like a whole bunch of stuff that came out back then. Some of it holds up, some of it doesn't. But that was a new idea. It was like a genuine step forward in opening the market up to games that were not big AAA blockbusters. Was just like a huge breath of fresh air to me, because I was never really a PC gamer at all. Didn't like playing on PC, don't like fiddling with technology, that kind of thing. So that was definitely Xbox 360, like all the way. I still have like all my games. I got my console. I don't know if it even works anymore, but 360 for sure. Then we bounced over to PS4 because the Xbox One was stupid. And that's just the way it was. It was really terrible. I was actually at Microsoft when they launched the Xbox One. I was there at the event in Redmond, the opening celebration. And I remember standing around looking at the Xbox One as they announced it and thinking like, what the fuck is happening here? Why are they talking about fantasy football. Why are they talking about getting ESPN? Like, I want to talk about the games. I want to talk about your console. What does it do for me? And they kept talking about, like, is this all-in-one media center and all these other things you could do with it, like, you know, order food online and stuff. I'm like, fuck all that. Like, what? Where are your fucking games? So Microsoft really just grossly misjudged what was going on, and the Xbox One was a debacle. It was just so embarrassing and stupid. After that, here we are, Xbox X. Again, because it was available. Game Pass, I think, is fantastic. Everybody in my house is on Xbox right now, so we can all play together. And that was kind of my quick journey through the years. I mean, there's more to it than that. I've had basically every console at one point or another. Dreamcast, the original Xbox, which I thought was a piece of crap. Basically every handheld, except for the original Game Boy. We were really poor at the time. This is like way before I had a job or anything. And so my friends where I lived had Game Boys. I did not have a Game Boy. And I was so fucking jealous, man. I was so crazy, but my parents didn't have the money and we just couldn't swing it. And like, I would always like go to my friend's house and like, I want to play Tetris or Super Mario. What is it? Super Mario Land, something like that. The 13 coins one or whatever. And I just remembered being so jealous I didn't have one. But that was really the only one I missed out on, the original Game Boy. But after that, you know, I got on board with like Game Boy Advance and 3DS and all that stuff. So I had the Switch now. Vita, PlayStation Vita, I think was great. PSP, fucking awesome. So many fucking great games on the PSP. 3DS as well. So there's still more to talk about. There's still more consoles to talk about. But that was my quick list of main consoles in previous generations. Hopefully that answered your question there. Next question coming from John is, what games do you think have the most satisfying movement and what made it good? Now, John, I know this is a thing for you. I've heard your show. I've heard you talk about it. I know that you are like interested in movement and that's a thing for you. And sometimes it even like, it makes a game for you. I don't know that it's ever really made a game for me. And I got to be honest, I was almost not going to answer this one because I just couldn't think of a fucking answer, man. I was like, I literally can't think of anything where movement was the big thing for me. I was really racking my brain and I was just about to delete it off the list and I was going to give you an apology on a DM or something. But then one did come to mind, and it's not the answer you're looking for, I don't think, but I think it makes sense to me. The game that I think had the most satisfying movement that I really like and makes sense and what made it good for me is probably Far Lone Sails. This is the 2D indie game that came out a couple years ago, probably more than a couple years ago, where you are a little person and you are in a ship, a land ship that is built for two people. You do not have your second person. That's part of the story of the game. So you are on your own, and so you have to manage all the things in the ship by yourself where you should have two people. Like one person should always be steering and one person should be like loading the fuel or whatever and like trimming the sails and minding the wheel or whatever, working the anchor. But because you are all by yourself, and I love this premise. I mean, I don't even want to talk about it because I think it's just fantastic. But basically, if you pay attention to the story, there's a great reason for why you're doing this. There's a great reason for what's going on. I love Far Lone Sails. One of the best indies I've played in quite some time. I still think about it all the time. But that motion is what I like. Now, what is it about it? You're in this ship and you're cruising along the ground. Now, there are puzzle sections. There are parts where you get stuck. But the part that I really like about this and the part that sticks out to me and the part I'm using as the answer is when you're in these flat open spaces where your sail on the ship is open. You've got your fuel. You're kind of running back and forth between all the different stations inside the ship. You get an ant farm 2D view of it. And you're just there like you're doing it. Like you're doing the work of two people successfully. Everything is going. The wheels are turning. The sail is open. You're catching the wind. And you're just out there on top of the ship, hearing the wind whipping by. Maybe the music kicks in. The landscape is like whizzing by in the background. And you're just out there having a moment, right? Like that to me is one of probably the most memorable like movement-based moments I've ever played in a game. I don't think movement stands out to me in the same way. I really struggle to come up with that one, but I think that one, it really rings true for me. I can often like close my eyes and think back to like the plains before you get to the volcanoes, or like when you're just having just a second of like nothing going on, but just being out there in the wind and just traveling really quickly. I think that was really a moment for me. So I'm going to say Far Lone Sails and call it good because honestly, I can't think of any other answer for that. Probably on me. Okay. Moving on into some non-game related stuff here. John says, a couple of friends of mine had kids lately and have been grappling with parenting and parental mistakes, like passing on the wrong things by accident. Any advice for parents worried about this? Okay, so full disclosure, I have two kids. I spent a lot of time thinking about parenting. My wife Gina and I spent a ton of time talking about parenting, reading the books, comparing philosophies, just discussing things, going through scenarios. Like, we were really conscientious parents. We really very carefully thought about it long and hard. And, we had some difficulty conceiving as well. That's a very common thing for people these days. And so that gave us even more time to think about it. I think altogether it was probably about 4 years of just constant discussion and thinking and workshops and whatever before we finally had our kid. And so here's something that I took from all this, right? I think when parents have kids, number one, you have to want to have kids. Like, I think everybody talks about it and all that. I still meet people who kind of have kids out of obligation because their in-laws are pressuring them, or they just think it's like the thing that they should do because that's what everybody else does. Like, my number one advice would be, don't have kids unless you really want them, like actively want them, because kids are, obviously they're expensive, but also it's a huge time commitment. Also, it's a huge just commitment overall. Like, your entire life is going to change. If your life doesn't change when you have kids, then you're doing something wrong and you probably shouldn't have had kids in the first place. So there's that. But these people already have kids, and what do you want to do? So here's the thing. I think the most important thing to do about kids and how to raise them is just to be honest. Honest with yourselves, honest with yourself, honest with your partner, and honest with the kids. So there's a lot of really bad advice out there, and I could talk about this literally for months. And in fact, I was actually planning on writing a book on parenting before life kind of took a turn. I had some notes together. My wife and I was going to contribute. We were going to like literally write a book about parenting. So I could talk about this like forever. But Cliff's Notes version here. I find that the best parents will parent to your core beliefs. I mean, I guess every parent will. So you may start off with all these ideas, but you're not going to do anything unless you personally believe in it on your own. Like, maybe you're one of those people who's like, oh, I watch TV all the time and I love movies and stuff, but I'm not going to show TV to my kids. They're not going to know what a TV is. And there's going to be no screen time and all this stuff. Like, that's not going to hold up. That's not going to work because that's not who you are. So I think that every parent should just come to grips with the fact that you will naturally and most comfortably parent to your own core beliefs. So figure out who you are first, which is, I guess, a big task for some people. And then whatever you feel like is a good direction to do, like, just do that. Like, be conscientious about it, right? So if you love movies and TV, don't act like they don't exist for your kid. Like, sit down with your kid and watch it with them. Like, talk them through your favorite things when it's age appropriate. Integrate that into your life in a way that works for everybody, because then everyone will feel happier because you're doing the things that you like to do naturally. Your kids will see it as normal because you feel like it's normal. So that's like a really good piece of advice. I will also say, don't pay attention to all of the bad advice out there. And a lot of this advice really, if you just take a minute and think about it, a lot of the advice out there feels bad to do. I would say follow your gut, basically. So, for example, the biggest pet peeve of mine, and it's even more than a pet peeve, I think it's a crime, is the whole like cry it out thing. So I'm sure you probably have heard about this. So some doctors and some, book writing people and whatever will be like, oh, your kid, they're going to cry and you just stick them in a bed and close the door and walk away and you're going to hear them screaming for hours and they just have to learn. They got to tough it out. Just let them tough it out. And if you go in there and if you offer them any comfort, you're going to make them weak and they're going to be so dependent and these kids are manipulating you, and don't do it because you need sleep and that's important and blah, 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 fucking blah. Okay. No, that's not right. Because once you have kids, hearing a child cry is one of the most stressful things that can possibly happen to you. My oldest is, hold on, I gotta count on my fingers here. My youngest is 15. So that means my oldest is 23. It's been a while. And even today, when I hear a baby crying and no one's picking it up, my heart starts going faster. I start sweating. I start feeling anxiety. I'm like, who's taking care of this child? Whose child is this? Mom, dad, anybody? Like, you got to come take care of this kid, right? So your gut will tell you you shouldn't be leaving that kid alone. Like millions of years of biology in your fucking DNA are telling you, go pick that child up, give that child some comfort. And it's only really, really recently that we have thought that we're so smart that we can tell biology what to do. So I would say if you want to, hold your baby, give them comfort all the time, do that thing, right? So as an example, we didn't believe in letting them cry it out at all. That's a bunch of horse shit. I think it's really damaging. I think the only thing it teaches your kids is that they can't count on you. If I cry, no one comes for me. And then I learn to be alone in this world, and I don't have the right bonds. I don't have the connections. I don't have the support that I need. Why would you do that to your kids? That's terrible. What we did was we had like a baby Bjorn, like backpack sort of a thing. And we just sucked the kid in it all the time. And like, it was either, baby was either on my wife or on me, basically 24/7. The kid never cried. He was always with a parent. He always knew that he was taken care of. There was always food and nurturing available. And he was super happy. He turned out super like well-adjusted, And according to doctors, we were like coddling the baby and being too soft and all this stuff. Fuck off, dude. Like, I think breastfeeding is the best way to go. I think holding your child as much as possible is the best way to go. And I think that your instincts, if you are a parent who wants to be a parent, your instincts will tell you that. And it's only doctors and psychologists and fucking Dr. Phil and whatever who tell you not to follow those things. That's bad advice. So follow your gut. Do what feels right to you. If you're being a good parent and you want to be a parent and you've got your kid, your body will tell you what to do, and listen to it. Don't let other people tell you otherwise. So be honest with what you do and what you like and what you enjoy. And be honest when your body tells you want to take care of your kid. I think that's, in a nutshell, the shortest answer I can give. Don't be too worried about exposing them to things. I mean, whatever. Share whatever food you like. Share whatever music you like. Share whatever films you like, within certain reason. When they become age appropriate, you can expand that a little bit. But just be who you are. And that will naturally translate over to your kid, and then it'll all work out in the end. Now, with all that said, asterisk, your kid will not be a carbon copy of you, no matter what you do. Your kid will be their own self. DNA will play some funny tricks on you. They will have some quirks. They'll have some weird likes and dislikes. They'll have some personality things that you don't know where they came from. That's just humanity, and you got to be ready for that. So also be ready to let them be who they are, whether they're gay or straight, or they like the wrong music, or they like different games or whatever. Just be prepared that they're not going to be a clone of you, and you'll be in good shape. I would love to talk parenting. Anybody want to talk parenting? Let's talk parenting. I would love to be on a parenting podcast. I don't think I'm going to write that book, but if anybody wants to talk, I got loads to say. Okay, next question. About the area of the U.S. you're from. This is also from John. About the area of the U.S. you're from. What are the best or most renowned local foods / nature spots / bands / game dev studios? Okay, multi-pronged question here. So I'm from Seattle, Washington, in the Pacific Northwest area of the United States, the upper left corner of our map, not including Alaska. I was not born here. I was born in California and then moved here when I was little. And most of my life has been spent here, although I have lived in other places. I've lived in Oregon. I've lived in Hawaii, lived in New York for a while. So I've been around a little bit. But really, Seattle and Washington State is what I consider to be home. So here, I think the best or most renowned food is teriyaki chicken. Teriyaki chicken was invented here, right here in Seattle. Teriyaki as a technique existed before that, but it was not applied to chicken, and it was not applied in the way that it is now known until people invented it here in Seattle. So that's a hometown invention, teriyaki chicken. I'm sure most people listening to this podcast have probably had it at one point or another. That's from Seattle. The other big thing that we're probably known for is Starbucks. Starbucks coffee is from Seattle. I don't like Starbucks. I think it's gross, and I'm pissed at them that they're supporting Republicans this year. So fuck you, Starbucks. But, the whole coffee push, the whole espresso thing, a lot of that had to do with Starbucks. And now the whole world is in its grip. But there were lots of coffee roasters, lots of coffee shops here. So espresso, mocha, anything like that, latte, a lot of that stuff started here, as evidenced by some periods of TV and movies from the 90s. Anytime you saw a TV show or a movie that had Seattle in the 90s, everybody was like coffee about everything, right? Like most famously something like Frasier or something like that. So coffee and teriyaki chicken is what I think the Pacific Northwest is known for, specifically Seattle. Let's see, nature spots. Hard to pick one because everything around here is a nature spot. You could be anywhere basically in Western Washington. Now, Western Washington, meaning that Washington State is divided in half by the Cascade Mountain Range. On the left, the west side, is Western Washington. It's cool. It's foresty. It's moist. On the right side is Eastern Washington. It's a fucking desert out there. Rattlesnakes, cactus, dry and brown. So I don't think a lot of people know that. But Western Washington is really what people think of when you think of Washington. And when you're out here in Western Washington, you are like no more than ever 15 minutes away from the water, from the ocean. You can get to Puget Sound, which is like a giant inlet. You can get to the beach, the coast, whatever. Like, you're never more than 15 minutes away, basically, from water. One of the various lakes or rivers around here. Lots of water in Washington State. You're never more than 30 minutes away from a forest. And I don't mean just like a couple of trees at a park. I mean like a forest-ass forest. You can be in literally downtown Seattle, and within less than 30 minutes, you can be standing in a patch of trees so tall that you cannot see past it. Like, you can be completely shaded, blocked from the sun, in trees that go up to the sky. You can't even wrap your arms around the trunks and stuff. So I know that there's a lot of development. It's not quite the same that it used to be. Progress is happening, quote unquote progress. But still, basically the entire place is like a nature spot. There's tons of hiking, tons of fishing, tons of water. And I love that no matter where we are, we can always be in a forest or go to the water at basically the drop of a hat, and without having like a big trip to be made out of it, right? As far as bands, I'm not like super into music, as everybody knows who knows this show or knows me. But it's got to be said, the grunge movement of rock and roll is probably what Seattle's most known for. Mudhoney, Pearl Jam, Soundgarden, Nirvana, Alice in Chains, Mother Love Bone, all those folks who were so big in the 90s. I mean, grunge was like a huge movement in the 90s, pretty famous. And so I think that's probably what we are most known for here. You can still feel the influence in music these days. A lot of people still like these bands quite a bit. And so that's, I think, our big claim to fame musically. As far as game dev studios, there's a lot of game developers in town. We are a real computer heavy, tech heavy, development heavy area. We have Nintendo is about 15 minutes from where I live. Microsoft is also about 15 minutes from where I live. Like, the world headquarters for Microsoft is there. I've been there before. I've met Bill Gates twice, literally myself. So we've got those two juggernauts here in town, Nintendo and Microsoft both. If you talk about actual like development studios, I looked up some stuff on Wikipedia, and it's a little bit of outdated information, but there's like a lot of people in town. So let me just take a quick look. I mean, Amazon Game Studios, obviously. Big Fish Games, I don't think is still doing anything, but they were here for a long time. What else we got here? We got Undead Labs, makers of State of Decay. We have Giant Emily Crab is here. Hardsuit Labs. Oh gosh, Midwinter Entertainment, MetaQuest, Mythical Games, NeoWiz, PopCap. I don't know. Are they still around? PopCap still around? They were here for a long time. I know that Carlos used to work over there. Runic Games, Ska Studios, makers of Salt and Sanctuary, I'm pretty sure. Strange Loop Games, System Era. We have, what else? Subset Games, makers of Into the Breach. Tons and tons of indies, right? Like, there's too many to even count. Like, if you stood in the middle of Seattle and threw a stick, like, you would guaranteed basically hit a game developer. So we are definitely a game town for sure. All right. Thank you for those questions, John. Much appreciated. Moving on. Another batch of questions here from Grabloid. Good old Grabloid from the Gaming the Wild Discord. Grabloid says, what is your favorite quote-unquote bad game? Could it be so bad that it's good, or just so bad that it must be played, etc., etc.? I don't know. I don't spend a lot of time playing bad games, and I think that if there's a bad game that I like, then it's not really bad, because there must be a good thing about it, whether it's got a good idea, maybe an interesting premise, maybe something unique about it, cool art, cool characters. I don't know. I don't think I ever like a bad game, but I think there's a lot of games that are traditionally seen as bad games, but actually are just misunderstood or just unappreciated, really, right? For example, I know I've talked about this before, but one of the bad games that I was a big fan of was Nier, the original Nier, when it first came out. People don't think about it like that now, but when Nier came out, it was drubbed, like it was trounced. It was like the joke, the butt of the industry for a long time. And I and many people at GameCritics.com were champions of it. There were a lot of people who thought Nier was garbage, and they thought it was stupid and they didn't understand it. And we thought it was great. So that was like an example of a quote unquote bad game that we actually ended up really liking. And boy, how the tables have turned on that one, right? But as far as something else, I think the best example is probably Deadly Premonition. That's another one where I think it's kind of the joke for a lot of people, or people say it's really so actively bad. But I think Deadly Premonition is actually brilliant. I'm a big Swery 65 fan. And when I played Deadly Premonition the first time, Yeah, it's really janky. There's a lot of weird stuff happening in it. There's some just really just off the wall choices being made there. But underneath all of it, it's just a really brilliant experience. Swery was doing some stuff that I don't think a lot of people were doing at the time. For example, like really integrating the feeling of being a detective in that town, really trying to incorporate real-time schedules, having the player be responsible to try to track people down and figure out what was what, putting clues together. And so much of it was like really idiosyncratic and humorous in a really kind of like David Lynch Twin Peaks way. I think it was just ultimately brilliant. Yeah, I mean, real talk, full disclosure, like Swery has never been the greatest at doing like technical production. There's always jank in his games. There's always control problems. There's always roughness. No argument for me there, but I was just always able to see past that to really get to the experience of what he was trying to convey. And I just think it's just really brilliant. I mean, I think it has one of the best endings I've ever seen in a game. It's been really impactful. I love York Morgan, the main character of that game, is one of my favorite characters of all time. So Deadly Premonition, I think, is something that most people would treat as a joke, or they think it's really terrible or awful. Good example of a kusoge, but I don't think that's really true. I think it's just misunderstood and unappreciated, and I think it's got a lot under the hood going for it. So that's probably my best example of my favorite quote-unquote bad game. Next question from Grabloid. Favorite game soundtrack? I am partially trying to shame you for playing games on mute. Yes, that is true. I very often play games on mute just because. Well, I don't know. I guess part of it is probably because I just have a different relationship to music than probably other people do. So both my parents are deaf. Neither one can hear. They use sign language as their main form of communication. And so I spoke sign language as a kid, and I still use it now. I'm an expert in sign language. And so we did not have music playing in our house all the time growing up. We just had like quiet. And so that was fine. I was totally fine with that. I enjoy quiet. I like being quiet. And it weirds me out when people have to have sound on all the time. I find it really distracting and bothersome. Some people are like, oh, I can't do my homework without having music blasting, or I can't do anything without sound on. My grandma, I famously remember my grandma, she like could not stand to be in a room unless there was like a TV on or some background noise going on. And I just found it to be really just like, I didn't like it. It's very distracting to me. When I write, I'm in a completely silent room. When I'm doing editing, I'm in a completely silent room. When I'm focusing on anything, I like to have just like a lot of quiet time so I can just devote all my brain cells towards whatever the task is I'm doing there. So I realize that's probably different than a lot of people. I realize most people probably grow up with music in the background and, dancing and stuff like that. So I don't know. I just had a different relationship to it. It's not like I'm anti-music at all. It's fine, but I need quiet time to really get my brain pumping in the way that I like it to pump. But I do listen to music. I do like music. I've been to concerts and, that whole thing. And music is good. I just, sometimes I just don't care to listen to music soundtracks. But if you're going to ask me for my favorite game soundtrack, I had a tough time coming up with this, as you might guess, because I just don't listen to a lot of game music or music in general. But I do remember Tenchu Stealth Assassins from PlayStation 1 back in 1998. Had a really banging soundtrack. It's on YouTube. You can check it out. Especially the opening track is just like so good. That was created by developers Acquire and also From Software. So there was a lot to From Software before Dark Souls, and this was like one of the things they were associated with. So the Tenchu Stealth Assassin soundtrack from PS1, definitely a banger. And if I had to pick another recent one, I would probably pick Lies of P. Just from like last year or whatever. That soundtrack was really great. They had some strong vocals on that. Some really kind of like great quasi-classical pieces going. Really great for mood setting and that jive with the action. So those are probably two of my favorite game soundtracks, Tenchu and Lies of P. I think both those are great, and both of them I can confirm are on YouTube. I just looked them up a second ago. Moving on, other question from Grabloid. Currently, what is your most anticipated game coming out? Okay. Hard to say because I'm usually so busy with Game Critic stuff that I don't really look more than a week or two in the future. I have a lot of stuff going on 24/7, so I don't think that far ahead because I've usually got my hands full with what's going on right here and right now. That said, I am very much looking forward to Metal Slug Tactics. I like Metal Slug in general, and I also love turn-based tactics games. That one looks like a real like twist on the formula, and I'm very curious to see what they're going to do with that. So Metal Slug Tactics. Also looking forward to Star Wars Outlaws. I know that there's a big danger of this being, Ubisofted, with too much filler and too much like stuff to do. But I don't know. I think the open world formula is a good fit for the Star Wars universe. I appreciate that we're getting brand new characters, and I could just see this being a good thing. I'm really hoping that they create the game that I'm seeing in my head, And I would love to go back to a Star Wars oriented thing where it's not just about Luke Skywalker, it's not just about Jedi, but just being in the world, telling other stories, telling other, situations, seeing other characters, meeting new people. Just like there's got to be more to the Star Wars universe than the Skywalker stuff, as we're seeing in recent media. So looking forward to more of that. And I think as a Warhammer 40K fan, definitely looking forward to Space Marine 2. It'll be great to get another like really big budget, bombastic, huge explosions, bloody chainsaw sort of a thing. I could go for that right now. Just little like mindless hack and slash, getting rid of the Tyranids and stuff. That would be pretty fun. So Space Marine 2. That said, in the back of my mind, I'm not really thinking about brand new games coming out. What I'm really thinking about is my backlog. I'm kind of got the itch right now to go to some of my backlog titles. And if you were to ask me what I was really looking forward to, I'm like, well, I'm actually looking forward to going back to play Gears of War Tactics, which I've had on my backlog forever and never gotten around to. I really want to get back to Graveyard Keeper, which I said earlier in the show. I've started 3 times and never finished. I really, really, really want to finish that. I really want to come back to it. I really want to play Echo on PS4. I think there were some Hitman developers involved in that. That's a game where it's a really high concept sci-fi game where you play this lady who goes into this like weird space station, and inside the space station you fight clones of yourself, and whatever you do is what the clones do. It's got some problems. It's rough, but I really want to play that one. There's a bunch of stuff I really want to play, and I have put most of those on backlogged.com. So if you go to Backlog and you put my name in, just Brad Galloway, all one word, you'll see a lot of the stuff, like 90% of the stuff that I'm really, really, really excited to play on my backlog. Now, my backlog is much bigger than that. My ultimate backlog, if we're talking about all the stuff that I own that I haven't gotten to, like talking about all the consoles I have, all the download games I've paid for, all the codes I've gotten over the years, my total backlog, I mean, we're probably talking at least, I want to say probably upwards of 4,000 games. I'm not going to get to all those. I know that I'm not, and I've made peace with that. But the ones on backlog.com, those ones I really am going to try to get to, and I'm really excited about. So if you want to see what I'm really looking forward to, go to Backlog and you'll see what's on my mind right now. Next question from Grabloid is, what current trends in gaming drive you nuts and should be banned? Ooh, good question. Parrying. Fuck parrying forever. I'm so fucking sick of parrying. I know you guys have heard me say this before. I'm going to say it again. I'm so tired of it. I'm so fucking tired of it. Very few people ever do it well. It just ends up being too much risk for not enough reward. It's also often kind of geared for people who have a very specific bandwidth of reflexes. I just dislike it. I've never been good at parrying. Never, ever. Even when I was younger, I was not good at parrying. I'm not good at it now. I hate it. And if you're going to do it, either give me a window that's flexible, maybe let me tune it up or loosen it up, make it smaller or make it bigger up to my preference. Give me tools, maybe let me equip something that lets me adjust the parry window, maybe put in the settings, who knows, the accessibility settings, anything like that. Give me some kind of way to mitigate it, because I fucking can't stand when developers tune parrying to their own reflexes and they don't give a shit about anybody else, and it turns into like a my way or the highway situation. And I just can't stand that. If you're not going to give me any options, then at least make it optional, in the sense that don't make parrying required to play your game successfully. Let me block or dodge or do something else. Any game that forces me to parry but does not give me any tools to modify the parry window can just get fucked. Like, seriously. Other things that I need to be banned for a while. Crafting. We're doing way too much crafting these days, you guys. Way, way, way too much crafting. It's not fun. I don't enjoy it. I don't think it's a good way to spend my time. I don't like it when it's forced into other games. I don't think people have really got it down. I think if you're going to do it, there's a way to do it that's not too intrusive or too onerous, and I don't think we're quite there yet. Most games I play with crafting do it too much. I also think that the current trend of throwing players into your game without a proper tutorial is garbage. I think all games should have a really thorough, well thought out tutorial that covers all your bases. So I don't like this experimental kind of approach to like, well, if this person really cares about my game and they want to know about it, they'll figure it out. Okay, I don't, and I won't play your game. So no more games that have like zero tutorial. And also anything from Souls. I love Souls, but I'm sick of Souls and I'm tired of it. And I'm tired of everybody aping Souls and wanting to be Souls and adding Souls elements. Like, let's just do something else for a while. Okay. Move on to just basically anything else. Please. Grabloid also asks, what are your family's game of the years so far? Um, okay, so I clearly have a game of the year list going, and no one knows what's on it yet, except for Dungeons of Hinterberg, which is definitely confirmed. Although I'm not going to say which position it's in. We'll get to those. We'll get to those in December. But my family, my son, age 15, and my wife, I asked them right before the recording. I'm like, hey, the people on the podcast want to know like what your games of the year are, and they both gave me a funny look, and I thought that was funny. But the wife said, well, it's hard to choose. She's played a couple things, but she's been really busy. My wife has a big time job, and she's managing a lot of stuff. She had not nearly had enough time this year to play as many games as she normally would. So with what she's played this year so far, she said Dungeons of Hinterberg for sure. She's playing it right now, so there's like the recency bias, but she also really likes it. It's totally up her alley, and I agree with that one. She also likes Dredge a lot, although I think it's from last year, but she just got to it this year, and she really liked that quite a bit. So Dredge is a big favorite. And also Helldivers 2, we're playing that as a group pretty often. She was definitely all in on Helldivers 1, so of course she's in on Helldivers 2. So those are her picks of the year so far. There's more to come. My son, I said, hey, son, what are your games of the year so far? The podcast listeners want to know. And his first response was, please go away. Don't ask me when I'm playing a video game. And then I said, rude. And then I said, no, I need an answer right now. He was in the middle of playing War Thunder, I think. He's been playing a lot of War Thunder lately. So I'm like, dude, so what are your favorite games this year? And I'm like, is it War Thunder? Because you put like 100 hours in this. He's like, nah, I hate this game. He's just grinding forever in this game. I'm like, oh, okay, weird. Okay, what about Helldivers 2? You play that like every day. No, game's janky as fuck. No, I don't. That's got problems all the time. I'm like, okay, I get it, but you play it every day. Yeah, but no, it's not my favorite. Okay. What about Strongest Battlegrounds on Roblox? You play that like literally every day. No way. Really? Like literally that's all you're playing these days. Like Strongest Battlegrounds over and over. Not your favorite? No. Okay. So what was your favorite tier? I don't know. Go away, Dad. So that was his response. That's all I could get out of him. I hope that's good enough, Grabloid, man. That's all we got on that one. All right, last question of the segment, last question of the show. Also comes from Grabloid. Going back to music, it's funny that you guys want to ask me about music all the time. It's so funny because you know I'm not a music person, right? Like I don't spend a lot of time listening to music. I don't talk about music. I don't have the same relationship with music, and it's so funny to me that you guys want to ask me about music all the time. But I will answer this because I'm glad to answer, and I'm grateful for the questions, and I'm glad you guys listen to the show. So Grabloid says, what music genre did you listen to most growing up? Favorite bands? What about now? Favorite album of the last few years? Okay. So growing up, like I said before, I didn't really listen to a lot of music growing up. Most of the music I encountered was like when I went to my grandparents' house or my aunt and uncle's house or something like that. And I would just listen to like whatever. And as a child of the 80s, it was often like new wave or 80s pop. And so that kind of stuck with me for a long time. For many years, I listened to Sting and Prince specifically because they were like, kind of what I grew up with and what I really liked. I liked a lot of their vibe. And I think both of them are really great artists. Sting has gotten pretty soft in his old age. I think he was better when he was younger and a little bit more edgy and vital. He's kind of coasting these days, but there's no disputing. He put out quite a number of good songs and good albums back with the Police and then afterwards on his own. And Prince is a musical fucking genius. I have nothing but the utmost respect for like Prince's career and the albums he's put out and the things he's done. I think he's so fantastic as an artist. I've listened to like basically every song he's ever written, and I have like almost all his albums. And I was fortunate enough to see Prince live in concert twice. And each concert was the best concert I've ever been to in my entire life, both times. So him dying was like a huge loss. I just was so broken up about that because I was such a fan. And the kind of listener that I am, when I find somebody that I like, what I usually end up doing is I end up buying like all their albums and listening to like all their songs because I kind of want to know what their musical journey was. I want to know what their first album sounded like. What did they sound like now? What were their trends? What were they listening to? Kind of what was going on. And so I like to listen to everything. So I don't listen to like a whole bunch of different people. I listen to a smaller number of people. But when I do listen to them, I listen to like their entire catalog, even like the B-sides and stuff like that. Queen is a big one that I really like a lot. Living Color was big for me when I was in high school. I got to see them, I think, once, and I was really impressed with like all of, especially Vernon Reid's guitarist skills. Fucking complete like maestro, and like he does not get nearly the props that he deserves. So Vernon Reid, if you're listening to the show, and I hope you are, man, I love you so much. Fantastic guitar going on there. In recent years, I've switched to more. I don't even know what genre you'd even call it. Maybe you want to let me know what kind of genre it is. But like Chairlift was my favorite band for like a long time. And when they broke up, I started following Carolyn Polachek. I'm like her biggest fan in the world. I think she's got an amazing voice, and I love like all of her songs. Again, another artist that I've done like a complete deep dive into. Listen to like every song she's ever put out, her whole catalog. I love Carolyn Polachek. I can listen to her like any time of the day. Big fan of Magdalena Bay. I love them a lot. They're really funny and cute, kind of pop. And also Chapel Roan. I'm like super into Chapel Roan right now. And I am going to take the douchebag hipster card and say I was listening to her before she blew up. I know she's really big right now as she's on everybody's lips, and that's totally cool. I'm really happy for her. I'm glad she's finding the success she deserves, but I will be that douche bro and say, yes, I was listening to her before she got popular. And I think she's fantastic. Great songwriting, great lyrics. I love that she's like so like out and proud, horny about stuff in so many of her songs. Just wonderful talent. Big time into Chapel Roan right now. If anybody wants to hear some of these songs I'm talking about, I did put together a mix on YouTube. Just go to YouTube and just put like Brad Galloway mix, and it's like some of the stuff I listen to when I'm doing my paperwork, when I'm doing taxes, or when I'm doing my invoices and stuff like that. I'll just put that on, and you'll hear like a lot of those songs or what I'm grooving to these days. Other quick mentions: Hem. HEM. I was like super in love with them for a while. This is in reference to favorite album of the last few years. I don't know when it came out, but Hem's Rabbit Songs I think is basically a perfect album. I love every song on that album. I've listened to it like 1,000 times. I love that album so much. That's on YouTube. And also The Joy Formidable. I can't remember if they're from Ireland or Scotland. I'm sure that's really offensive and I apologize, but they're from like that part of the world, I'm pretty sure. And their album The Big Roar came out, and I think that's another perfect album where I've listened to it front to back so many times. I used to just put it on and just like I would love every song on that album. I love that one to bits. So there you go. Hope that answered your questions. I do have a relationship with music, even if I don't talk about it that often, even if I don't listen to music soundtracks. There you go. Okay, folks, that is it. That is it for episode 400. This show is officially over. I had a couple of non-game things to talk about this week, but real talk, I think my voice is going and I'm getting kind of tired. I'm going to put a pin on the movies and TV that I usually talk about, and we'll just get to those next time. I'll save them for next time. It's nothing that can't wait. Right now, I think what I'm going to do is close this episode out and call it a show. Folks, before the closing music, I would love for you to leave a review, share the show on social media, and most important of all, please recommend Videogames to your friends, because nothing beats good old word of mouth. If you would like to help support the show and help me get these bills paid, you can do that over at patreon.com/the Videogames podcast. If you want to join the Discord, that is absolutely free of charge. Let me know. I also want to get your questions and comments. As you've just heard, I love questions. I answer them all. Hit me up. I'm in the Videogames Discord, or you can hit me up directly at videogamespodcast@gmail.com. You can also reach me on social media. It's my name, BradGallaway, all A's, no O's. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Blue Sky. And I think that's going to do it for episode 400 for large. Thank you all again for joining me here on Videogames Podcast. Thank you for listening all these years. If you're a frequent listener, thank you for supporting the show. Thank you for being around. Thank you for questions, comments, feedback, for reaching out. Thank you for all of that stuff. The podcast isn't going anywhere. We're going to be back next week with 401. But I just want to say I really appreciate you all. You know, doing a podcast is kind of a labor of love. It takes time, takes effort, and just interacting with people and knowing that people listen really kind of makes it worth it. So thank you for being with me for these 400 episodes, and here's to 400 more. Cheers.